Hey, good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gadi Schwartz coming to you from Los Angeles. And here are the stories we're watching tonight, starting with a record-breaking heat wave affecting tens of millions of Americans from Houston to Hartford. So is human-caused climate change to blame? Plus, the Justice Department says Hunter Biden, the president's son, will be indicted later this month, all after that plea deal relating to gun charges and unpaid taxes fell apart. Then COVID cases are on the rise again. We're going to have an update on what the CDC and health officials are saying about a COVID booster coming this fall.
What is really important is that those who are most at risk for developing severe disease receive a booster, receive an additional dose.
And a man wrongfully convicted of rape is exonerated nearly 50 years later thanks to DNA evidence.
After 48 years, I'm walking out a free man.
And the summer of extreme heat is officially in record-breaking territory. This was the hottest summer ever. In fact, we smashed the all-time records set for June, July, August. We're not done yet. Today was sweltering in places like D.C. and New York, well into New England. Tomorrow could be a whole lot worse, and the same goes for a lot of the South. Basically, all of Texas will be over 100 in September, and other spots could break even more records. Aaron Gilchrist is out there in D.C. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us. All three airports in the D.C., Baltimore area just broke or tied records today, right? Cool kids going back to school there. What are people doing to stay cool?
Yeah, you know, Gadi, I've never been so happy for the sun to go down. We're finally seeing the heat index, that feels like temperature, dropping into the 90s here in D.C. and Baltimore and places around this region. We actually saw Dulles Airport in Northern Virginia get into the triple digits for the first time ever in a month of September. And that's been the reality for so many locations here in the Mid-Atlantic, up in the Northeast and down in Texas, as you mentioned, dealing with these temperatures that are well into the 90s and above 100 degrees in so many cases, and that heat index that's above 100 degrees as well. As kids have been going back to school, they've had to deal with the realities of air conditioning systems, sometimes in old buildings that just can't hold up, and in other cases, no air conditioning at all. Baltimore, for example, today had to close several of its schools. They opted for virtual learning instead. Other schools closed early. And kids are distracted, really, when you think about it, distracted by dealing with this heat when they should be thinking about learning. I want you to hear a little bit of what we heard from kids about the heat they're seeing in their schools today.
I'd rather it be this weather when I'm at the beach or anywhere but school.
Basically, like, my arms would stick to my desk and I would have to, like, rip them up because it was so hot and sweaty.
We do have a few fans, that's all.
When you step inside, like, any classroom, it's, like, so hot, so humid.
We were just drowning in our sweat because it was so hot.
Now, we saw a heat emergency declared here in D.C. today. The same was the case in many other cities in this part of the country. We expect that to be repeated tomorrow, as a lot of places are going to see temperatures well into the 90s again tomorrow before they start to see some of that heat break, Gadi.
Now, Aaron, what's this doing to businesses?
Well, you know, there are a lot of businesses in Texas in particular, for example. We know that the Federal Reserve in Dallas did a survey of businesses there, and they're losing business as a result of the heat that they're seeing. I think it was something like 24% of businesses surveyed there in Texas said that they are seeing a significant decrease or somewhat of a decrease in business because people just don't come out. They're heeding the warnings. They're staying at home. They're staying in air conditioning rather than going to shop or going to restaurants, and that's hurting businesses. The other reality that we're seeing is companies that have workers who work outside, they're seeing some slowdown in productivity as well. They can't spend as much time on construction sites or working on sewer lines as they might on cooler days when we're seeing record heat like this. And the places that are open for business, the workers are working, they're slowing down. And so it's taking longer to get things done as we deal with the heat wave that is a bona fide heat wave, three days or more above 90 degrees. And again, Gadi, we're waiting for this heat to break. And it's worth noting that as we look at climate change, this is something that we could see for many summers to come.
Aaron Gilchrist, thanks so much. Let's turn to meteorologist Michelle Grossman, who's here with more on the heat and the tropics. Michelle, so it's not just here, right? We're talking global heat records falling this summer by some pretty wide margins. What's going on?
Yeah, hi there, Gadi. Yeah, July was the hottest on Earth on record, and same story with August, just second to July. So we've had the hottest summer on record. The global oceans that cover 70% of the Earth are the warmest they've ever been. And take a look at this graph, because we put this together. Brian, our graphics guy guru, put this together. So these are the hottest summers that we've had. And notice that most of these fall in the last 10 years, with the exception of 1998. So we continue to see summer after summer, year after year, being very, very warm. And this is no exception. We're looking at temperatures really warm. Aaron just told us how warm it was in D.C. So many 80s across the map still. We're looking at 86 right now in New York City. The sun has set already. We're still looking at 100 degrees in Dallas, 102, 100 degrees in Del Rio, Amarillo, 90 degrees. And we're going to break more records tomorrow. We've broken daily records, monthly record, all-time records, seasonal records. And we're looking at 73 million people under heat alerts tomorrow. That's heat advisories, heat watches, excessive heat warnings. Where you see this hot pink, that's an excessive heat warning. That includes Dallas. Dallas has had a tough 3 months where they've broken record after record. And Phoenix, you're under an excessive heat watch. And we're going to see temperatures soaring over 110 there for several days to come here. So we're going to finally see some relief in the Northeast. It's going to take a little bit of time. Here's that cold front. This is the relief maker. So this is going to move through it, sort of opening the door to Canada, allow some cooler air to come in. So Minneapolis was 20 degrees cooler than it was yesterday. Yesterday it was in the upper 80s. Today into the mid 60s. As we go throughout time here, we'll see that cold front moving, but not before tomorrow. We're looking at temperatures soaring once again into the 90s, 97 in Philadelphia. Most likely breaking that record of 95, where Aaron is. D.C. 100 degrees again tomorrow, so probably sweating out there tomorrow. Richmond 100, 97 in Roanoke. And then we look towards Friday. Notice this cooler air here. There's that door opening, so we're looking at fall-like temperatures in Cleveland, also Milwaukee, actually below normal for this time of year. That is a nice break, but we're still warm out ahead of this front. We're looking at temperatures in the 90s in Hartford and the South. We're going to stick with this heat, too. Dallas 105 on Friday. Look at the weekend, because there's a relief that we get into the Northeast. That cold front swings through. It's going to sweep out that warmer air. We're still feeling like fall in portions of Buffalo, 73 on Monday. Boston into the low 80s, the upper 70s. Same story in New York City, right closer to normal. 83 on Saturday. Sunday, we're looking at 82. So good news for all the kids playing sports as we go throughout time here. Now, it comes at a price. So here's a southern area where we're going to see temperatures still in the 100s in San Antonio. Houston near 100 degrees for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And this is a problem. We have that cold front moving through really warm air. So two ingredients that sort of spark some storms. That's what we're seeing at this hour. You can see where this cold front is. It's from the Great Lakes to the Ohio Valley into the Tennessee Valley. Where you see this yellow here, that is the greatest chance of some really strong storm winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, isolated hail, and also the chance for a few tornadoes. Not zero, but it is on the low side. Then tomorrow, 27 million people at risk. This is where things start to change in the Northeast. It's going to come a little later in the day once we get that daytime heating and that cold front through. But where you see this yellow here, that includes Philadelphia into D.C., New York. You could see some strong storms as well. We're looking at winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, hail, and also the chance of a few tornadoes. So it's hot in the U.S. We're hot in the tropics, too. Hurricane Lee became a hurricane as of 5 p.m. It's barely a hurricane at 75 mile per hour winds. The threshold is 74, but still it's just showing the power and the warmth that the Atlantic Ocean has. And look what happens as we go throughout time here, because we're looking at 75 mile per hour winds. It's 1,130 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands. I do want to show you this real quick, though, because as we go throughout time here, look how it strengthens into a major storm. By Friday, Category 3. Into the weekend, into next week, we're looking at Category 4 storms. So this is one to watch. It looks like it will curve, but still along the East Coast, Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, Bermuda. We need to kind of watch this over the next week or so. Back to you.
Hurricane Lee, something we'll be hearing a lot more of in the future. Michelle Grossman, thanks so much.
Sure.
A convicted killer, Danilo Cavalcante, is still on the loose 7 days after escaping from prison in Pennsylvania, and police have finally released video showing how he escaped. Check this out. This is Danilo there on the left in the exercise yard. He waits about a second, and then you see him start to climb up that wall horizontally. Now, there's supposed to be razor wire in that area to prevent that sort of thing, and it was put in place just a few months ago when another inmate escaped.
This escape was similar to the methodology of the escape by Cavalcante, and the escape by Eagle Bolt allowed the prison to identify a deficiency in the exterior exercise yard where the escape occurred.
Now, Cavalcante was last spotted at the Longwood Gardens near Philadelphia Monday night. Since then, 2 nearby school districts have canceled classes to keep their students and staff safe. The gardens are also closed today. NBC's George Solis joins us now. George, what's the latest here?
Yeah, Gadi, I think the headline is that video. It shows how Cavalcante escaped from the Chester County prison. It's one of the many questions that a lot of people had since this manhunt began. And you saw and you mentioned he was crab walking against that wall there, bypassing that razor wire. Officials at the prison say they thought that would have been enough to stop anyone from trying to get out. But obviously it did not work in this case. And now this manhunt goes on its 7th day, entering a 2nd week. Officials know that his size is a factor in this search because he is a small guy, right? 5 feet, 120 pounds. He's in this densely wooded area. Officials saying they took a lot of preventative measures after that first escape that you mentioned. That was just back in May. So officials know that they have a lot of work to do now to make sure this type of escape does not happen again, Gadi.
They say they took a lot of preventative measures. They put up that razor wire. But about that escape, in May at the same prison, it sounds like the same exact area. How similar was it to what he just pulled off?
Yeah, in short, it was basically a carbon copy. He mirrored the same type of escape plan. He crab walked up that wall. The only difference was there was razor wire there where there wasn't before. Now they're looking at what other preventative measures they can take there. Prison officials definitely addressing that today during a news conference. Take a listen.
Once the additional razor wire had been added to the escape route following Igor Bolt's escape in May, it was determined by our security advisors that this one level of security was sufficient. In fact, what was perhaps overlooked was the fact that addressing the single point of physical countermeasure should have been bolstered by additional means. We are addressing that.
A lot of words saying.
Prison officials know that. I'm sorry, Gadi. Yeah, no, prison officials obviously noting that there is definitely a lot of work to do. And some other measures that they're taking is that they are now fully going to enclose all outside exercise yards and install more cameras and adjust officers' positions outside, including putting some there outside that rec yard, Gadi.
7 days of searching that same area. What makes them so confident that he's still in the area that they're searching?
There's been more confirmed sightings of him all within this perimeter. Granted, it's now outside that 2-mile radius where they thought he was. It's almost basically there along the Delaware state line. So officials are concerned that he could cross over there, but they are working with a number of law enforcement agencies. I mean, keep in mind, there's about 200 law enforcement agencies from state, local, and federal authorities out here canvassing. They're using high-tech equipment to try and track this guy. They are still confident they will get their man. Gadi?
Disturbing situation out there. George Solis, thanks so much. All right. And we hate to say it, but there is a good chance that you or someone you know has had COVID recently. And it turns out COVID numbers are once again also on the rise. Not only are hospitalizations up across the United States, but the CDC says they're also seeing an increase of the virus in wastewater samples. The CDC is still recommending masking and testing, and sources are telling NBC News that the FDA may greenlight a new booster for the strains going around right now, and that could happen as soon as Friday. NBC medical contributor Dr. Vin Gupta joins us now. Dr. Gupta, what's behind this latest tick up in cases?
Well, Gadi, what we're seeing is about 30,000 new cases in places like Florida, an increase in hospitalizations across the country by about 20% from mid-July levels. That is concerning because we're just entering colder months here in early September. The reason here are variants that you and I have talked about this over the last 4 years, continue to shapeshift, they continue to lead to a more transmissible version of the virus. It's easier to catch. It's going to spread more easily. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing.
I mean, we say new COVID booster, and I feel like a million people are starting to roll their eyes. Is this new booster going to help people that may not have underlying conditions?
It's a great point. First of all, let's recognize the elephant in the room. 30% of the country hasn't gotten a single vaccine. 70% have. Many are not up to date with their boosters. So this information, it's critical to recognize. What do these boosters do? They keep you out of the hospital. Gadi, to answer your question directly, I've seen 40-year-olds in the ICU directly, just within the last few weeks, as a pulmonologist, never vaccinated end up in the ICU with COVID pneumonia. So this protects everybody. Does it protect those with underlying conditions over 65 to a greater extent? Of course, we've been talking about that. But this protects everybody, and we know that COVID, as it continues to change, is a greater threat to somebody that's 35 no underlying conditions than, say, flu. So it's important to get that shot.
An important perspective. Dr. Van Gupta, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And still to come, it looks like special counsel indictment is coming, but this time it is not for Trump. Instead, this one is aimed at the president's son, Hunter Biden. Those details are coming up next, so stay tuned. Hey there, welcome back. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. A former Michigan police officer was in court today over whether he should stand trial for his role in the death of a black man. Christopher Schur is facing second-degree murder charges for shooting and killing Patrick Loyola during a traffic stop last year that was caught on body cam. His lawyers are arguing it was self-defense. And a judge has rejected a motion from Trump's former lawyers to sever their combined cases in the Georgia 2020 election case. Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro both pled not guilty to racketeering charges. During today's hearing, the judge says he plans to start their trial on October 23rd. And a federal judge found Trump liable for defaming writer E. Jean Carroll today. Now, this new ruling involves statements Trump made in the 2019 when Carroll first went public with claims that he raped her. Now the jury will only need to decide how much Trump will have to pay her. And 61 people have been indicted in Georgia on racketeering charges in connection to the Stop Cop City movement. Now, that movement was under investigation after planned protests against an Atlanta police department and firefighter training facility. The indictment alleges the defendants conspired to prevent the construction of the facility through violence or intimidation. And this is the end of a nasty trip to the beach. A Florida woman ended up with a stingray stabbing her in the back, with the point coming just within an inch of her lung. She had surgery to remove that stinger, but says it still hurts to move her right arm. Yikes. And if you've been wondering whether Senator Mitch McConnell might be stepping down anytime soon after his second episode of freezing up at a podium, well, the 81-year-old senator has released a letter from a Capitol Hill doctor saying he's healthy enough to keep doing his job. Now, McConnell and his staff have repeatedly chalked those episodes up to being lightheaded and dehydrated. And in a letter, the doctor says he found no sign of a seizure disorder or stroke. But not all of his Republican colleagues are buying it. NBC's Ryan Nobles has the latest.
Tonight, after 2 freezing episodes in less than 2 months.
All right, I'm sorry, you all, we're going to need a minute.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell insisting there's no reason for him to step down.
I'm going to finish my term as leader, and I'm going to finish my Senate term.
Pressed about his health, the 81-year-old saying his doctor's report said everything.
What Dr. Monahan's report addressed was concerns people might have. It's some things that happened to me did happen. Well, they didn't. I think you pretty well covered the subject.
The Capitol attending physician examined McConnell, writing, quote, "There's no evidence that you have a seizure disorder or that you've experienced a stroke, TIA, or movement disorder such as Parkinson's disease."
How are you feeling?
The doctor attributed the spells to dehydration and a concussion McConnell suffered back in March when he fell and also fractured a rib. Tonight, most Senate Republicans are satisfied.
I think his health is sound and his leadership is as good as it's been in the 8.5 years I've been here.
But not all Republicans are on board, including McConnell's Kentucky colleague Rand Paul, who's an ophthalmologist.
Well, I've practiced medicine for 25 years, and it doesn't look like dehydration to me. It looks like a focal neurologic event.
Paul saying he's not questioning McConnell's ability to handle his job. Age now a major political issue. Some Democrats have called on 90-year-old Senator Dianne Feinstein to resign, and voters also have concerns about 80-year-old President Biden. A recent poll finding 77% of Americans, including 69% of Democrats, think the president is too old to serve another term.
NBC's Ryan Nobles, thanks so much. And we should point out that Senator Mitch McConnell talked about his health at a closed-door lunch meeting with Senate Republicans today, but he did not take any questions. And coming up, a viral TikTok is making Beverly Hills look like a ghost town. But what's really happening in 90210? We're going to take a look. But first, you got to see this. Caught on camera, this 3-legged bear barged into a Florida family's back porch. There he is. and he just headed over for a refreshing drink at the bar. He raided the outdoor fridge, and he went straight for the White Claws. No, seriously, we are not dad joking this time. He literally punched a hole in those cans with his claws, and he started guzzling. And his favorite flavors, mango and strawberry. Now, around those parts, they call him Tripod because of his limp. So if you're wondering why he's stumbling, it wasn't because of those White Claws. We'll be right back. Hey there, welcome back. And here are some of the headlines happening on the West Coast that we're following tonight. In Buena Park, California, officials are trying to figure out how this fire broke out in a Target last night. The video shows flames completely tearing through the kids' clothing section. Target has yet to comment, and the cause of the fire is still under investigation. And in Mesa, Arizona, a police officer is being credited with saving a baby's life. Now, this is Officer Shaquille Perez responding to an unrelated call when a mom runs up to him screaming for help. Her kid had stopped breathing, and body cam footage shows the officer performing CPR to get that kid breathing again. About 30 seconds later, the 1-year-old starts to cry, and the mother says she was racing to the hospital when she saw Officer Perez and pulled over for help. Incredible. And another incredible rescue to tell you about in the Angeles National Forest. A 23-year-old man couldn't keep going, and he needed help out of the forest, so rescuers jumping into action stayed with him all night long and then eventually hoisted him to safety. And some breaking news tonight out of El Paso, Texas. A federal judge there has ordered the state to remove those floating buoys from the Rio Grande. They were put on the border there back in July to deter undocumented migrants from illegally crossing the border. And this is a big win for the Biden administration, who sued the state and Governor Greg Abbott over the buoys, arguing they are illegal and pushing to get them removed. The governor's office responded tonight saying he is prepared to take this fight all the way to the Supreme Court. And tonight in California, there is talk of a discrimination problem that's usually something associated with India and Southeast Asia, the caste system, with the California state legislature passing a bill that would offer protection against caste discrimination here in this state. It's now heading to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk, and if he signs it, California will be the first state in the nation with such a law. But what is the caste system exactly, and is it a problem in the U.S.? Here's a quick look.
It's a form of discrimination in India and across Southeast Asia that dates back thousands of years. And while most Americans have only a vague idea of what it is, the caste bias is happening right now, right here in the United States as well. Then Maury Soundararajan, who advocates for members of the lowest ranked caste, explains.
It's based on a social fiction, very similar to the way that race is, with the idea that a certain group of people who are born in the top caste, which is called the Brahmin caste, basically had all the privileges and basically divided up the rest of society on lowering grades of caste and spiritual purity. And the lower that you went on the pyramid, the more excluded you were, the more terrible jobs that you got.
But some of the most sought-after jobs in this country are impacted by the legacy of caste discrimination.
It has been over 1 year since I left Google.
Tanuja Gupta used to be a senior manager at Google until she says she tried to organize a talk about the subject of caste discrimination.
A number of Google employees started reporting to HR and to my VPs that they felt the talk that was about to be held was Hindu-phobic. It made them feel unsafe at the workplace.
The talk was canceled.
When I blew the whistle on this decision, Google lowered my performance rating, reduced my compensation, and deemed me ineligible for future promotions.
Gupta eventually quit, writing in a resignation letter that my career at Google has come to an end because of this company's willful ignorance of caste discrimination. A Google spokesperson said, "We made the decision not to move forward with this proposed talk, which was pulling employees apart," adding that it has a very clear policy against retaliation and discrimination in our workplace. Then Maury Soundararajan has spent much of her career trying to get media companies to add caste as a protected category in their hate speech policies.
I went to school at UC Berkeley, where I was one of the first caste-oppressed students to be out about my identity. During that time, I faced a lot of threats, both rape threats and death threats. People would openly spit on my face and give me slurs.
Since then, universities like the Cal State system got the ball rolling on banning caste discrimination. Back in February, Seattle became the first city to ban caste discrimination, and now California is on the verge of becoming the first state to do the same. But not every South Asian American agrees that we need specific laws and policies aimed at ending caste discrimination here in the U.S. Suhag Shukla is the executive director of the Hindu American Foundation, and she says laws might actually amplify discrimination.
The challenge with caste as a category is that when you look at the way these pieces of legislation have come about, or in the definitions themselves, they're equating caste with only South Asians. So what you basically end up with is the only category under non-discrimination law that specifically targets a group based on their ethnicity. And that is basically discrimination.
But advocates are hoping changes will come soon.
So I'm very excited about what the future holds for the caste civil rights movement, and I really can't wait to see where we go next.
And there might not be more of a famous zip code in the entire country than 90210, right? For decades, it's been synonymous with luxury, with wealth. We know it through all those movies like Pretty Woman. But if you spend too much time on TikTok these days, you might be like, oh yeah, 90210, it's over because of this viral video that you might have already saw that makes it look like a shell of its former self. That video claims that about a dozen stores have closed, from high-end retailers like Chanel to Barney's, New York, to drugstores like Rite Aid. And tonight, the mayor of Beverly Hills is fighting back himself, arguing that at least in 90210, all that glitters is gold. And joining us now is NBC News correspondent Dana Griffith. Dana, what's really going on here?
Yeah, it's funny you say gold because the mayor's last name is
his
Gold,
name
right?
Is gold too, right? Yeah, crazy.
Dr. Gold. So we went to look for ourselves, and according to this TikTok post, which was posted about 2 days ago, has racked up now 702,000 views. It also led to a New York Post article that claims that, you know, Beverly Hills is now a ghost town and that stores have shuttered amid the LA crime wave. Now, yes, LA has had some crime. We've seen those viral smash and grabs. But I asked the mayor, Dr. Julian Gold. He tells me that that post is entirely inaccurate. Listen.
None of the stores they showed were actually in Beverly Hills. We've actually had, I think we've had a dozen restaurants open. Our business is booming. We have a lot of tourists in town. Our hotels tell us they're back to occupancies that approach the 2019 pre-pandemic levels.
So I asked, well, is there any truth to some of these stores leaving amid, you know, this crime wave? And he says, to his knowledge, no.
Wait, hold on. He says none of the stores in that video are in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, in fact, he says those stores are actually in West Hollywood, and I think it's Robertson Drive, which is a similar name to
Rodeo, yeah, I guess, kind of.
Well, I think it's like, it doesn't look like Rodeo, but there is another street name that, you know, similar in Beverly Hills. But he tells me that they may have had smash and grabs like a year or two ago, but none recently. And he says part of that is because they've actually gone to great lengths to improve the security. They have one of the most robust camera systems, I'm told. They have a drone that was actually flying above during our interview. And if someone commits a crime, they can have that person in handcuffs within 2 minutes based upon this new drone that they are using. And they say even some of these stores have private security. We were on Rodeo Drive earlier today. We saw a lot of stores that either had their doors closed and maybe they're letting in one or two at a time, or they've got, you know, some beefy bodyguard outside. So it kind of deters that sort of seedy element that you're seeing, you know, at the malls or in these other shops where you're able to get in quickly with a dozen friends and then escape. But Rodeo Drive is one way in, one way out. So you don't have much luck if you think you're going to go down there and do what we've seen in other areas.
Okay, so breaking news, none of the stores in that were actually in Beverly Hills, and the smash and grabs that we've been seeing did not happen at those stores and did not happen in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, according to the mayor.
So what you see on TikTok
isn't always true.
Except for, I gotta say, I've been seeing your TikToks recently on my For You page. They are fire. So
thank you.
Maybe you put together a TikTok on this.
Maybe I should. Yeah, those are all for Beyonce. We had a great weekend, so we'll see. We'll have to re-up that TikTok game.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you.
And still to come, the deadliest attack in Ukraine in months. It all happened just hours after the U.S. Secretary of State arrived in that country. And those details are coming up next, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world in 80 seconds. At least 11 people are dead in southern Europe after intense rain and flooding there. The severe storms damaged thousands of homes across Greece, Turkey, and Bulgaria and collapsed a few roads. Authorities say several people are still missing. And for months, Saudi Arabia and Russia have been cutting down their oil production, and now the two countries have agreed to keep those cuts coming for the rest of the year, which means less oil on the global market and likely an increase in gas prices. And is the country of India going to change its name? It's a question that's come up after a dinner invite for world leaders that referred to the country's head of state as the president of Bharat instead of India. Now, Bharat is technically the Hindi version of India, but the way it's being used ahead of a global summit has some experts saying it might be a play at appealing to the prime minister's nationalist base. And at least 17 people are dead in Ukraine after Russian missiles struck a market today. It is the deadliest attack in the country in months. At least one child was among those dead. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the attack, quote, utter inhumanity. A Russian attack happened just a few hours after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in the capital of Kyiv for a surprise visit there. It is his fourth time there since Russia's full-scale invasion started a year and a half ago. And in addition to meeting with top-level officials, including President Zelensky, Blinken also announced a new aid package worth more than $1 billion. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest.
This visit by Secretary Blinken to Ukraine today was all about showing the Ukrainian people who are still enduring day after day, night after night of Russian assaults against this country. The war has been going on for a year and a half and inflicted an enormous toll. We're talking about 500,000 people killed or injured on both sides, roughly 300,000 on the Russian side and 200,000 on the Ukrainian side. But the big difference is Ukrainians are being attacked in their homes and are trying to defend their country. And Secretary Blinken came here and wanted to convince the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government that even though Americans don't talk about the war as much anymore and it's not in the headlines, that the Biden administration is still committed to supporting Ukraine as it defends itself against this ongoing Russian aggression.
We're committed to helping Ukraine build a force for the future that can deter and defend against future aggression. The fundamental difference maker is that Ukrainians are fighting for their own country, for their own future, for their own freedom. Russians are not. And that gives me tremendous confidence that Ukraine will prevail.
And while Secretary Blinken was here, Russia launched another attack, this one on a city, a civilian target, market in the city of Konstantinovka. The attack took place at broad daylight around 2 o'clock. And like much of eastern Ukraine, there were no air defenses. Ukraine simply does not have enough air defenses to spread them around the country. There are air defenses in Kyiv and around key military and strategic locations, but a market in a city among cities in eastern Ukraine does not have that kind of luxury, does not have that kind of defense. So this rocket came in, killed 17 people almost instantly, wounded more than 20 more. One of the dead was a child. And this is the kind of attack that is happening very frequently. This attack was one of the worst in recent months, but attacks against civilians, unprovoked violence like this is a daily occurrence.
Richard Engel, thanks so much. And hundreds of thousands of women and children are fleeing Sudan as the United Nations is investigating a possible genocide there. NBC's Andrea Mitchell brings us this exclusive report from a refugee camp in Central Africa.
They are among more than 400,000 people who have escaped across the border to Chad from the brutal civil war in neighboring Sudan that erupted in force 4 months ago. We visited a makeshift camp there today with UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who wanted to hear firsthand what they've experienced.
And these are her two grandchildren?
No food, no drinks. Hasnat Ibrahim Yacob fled with her family after their older brother was killed by the militias, their home destroyed.
What do you hope for?
We need peace. Suer feared being targeted because she's a lawyer, so she fled.
I'm afraid. You're afraid? Yes.
This Doctors Without Borders hospital cares for the sick, including a recent measles epidemic and starving children.
It is overwhelming. I see those little children. I saw a 6-month-old who looked like a newborn, and I was told by the doctors that actually she was doing better.
But who can heal the pain from the terror they've experienced?
Many of the women in this makeshift camp tell of being raped by the marauding militias who kill the men and steal the boys to recruit them. It has led the UN to start investigating a possible genocide.
Humanitarian officials are reporting mass graves. I went to the Darfur region of Sudan in 2005 with Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. That was declared a genocide. 18 years later, history is repeating itself, and the leaders of the previous horrors have still not been brought to account.
Now we're seeing the evidence of it starting again. What we see happening in Darfur right now pertains to what we saw happening in Darfur in 2004. So we have gone backward in those years.
The UN says it needs $1 billion more to feed, house, and heal the refugees, and so far has raised only a third of that, hardly enough to deal with a tragedy of the scale. But today, the ambassador announced the U.S. did sanction some militia leaders for mass atrocities and another $163 million in aid, with no end in sight for the war and a flood of its desperate victims. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Audrey, Chad.
And some big indictment news tonight, but this time it is not Trump, but President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, that is facing a grand jury. The special counsel looking into Hunter Biden says he plans to indict the president's son at the end of this month. And in a court filing this afternoon, the special counsel laid out plans to hit Biden with charges related to a gun he bought back in 2018. NBC senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett joins us now. Laura, what do we know about tonight's announcement and these upcoming indictments?
Yeah, Gadi, this was sort of buried in a court filing by the special counsel's office. We do not know what the charges are. We do not know when the charges will be exactly filed, exactly where, but we know that's going to happen before the end of this month. And that's news because there have been some outstanding questions about what exactly Hunter Biden might be facing. Remember, his plea deal on some tax-related charges and a gun firearm-related charge had essentially fallen apart in July under a judge's scrutiny. A judge was questioning exactly what the prosecutor had in mind in terms of what he could and could not be charged with in the future. And under that questioning, the deal fell apart. And the question was, well, when exactly would prosecutors then decide to pursue this case? And we now have the answer to that, which is the final week of September, Gadi.
Have we heard anything from Hunter Biden?
Well, it's interesting. His lawyers have put out a statement tonight essentially pushing back on the idea that the deal is dead. His lawyers are essentially saying, look, he's been upholding his end of the bargain as it relates to the gun-related possession issue. As a part of that deal to avoid jail time, Gadi, he had to agree to, a certain number of things to try to stay out of trouble. And they've been saying he's been upholding his end of the deal on that, so he can't be prosecuted for any gun-related charges. But clearly, the special counsel has a different understanding of what has happened here. And the larger question, of course, looming in all of this is, does he face charges for tax-related issues, gun-related issues, or is it broader than that? Of course, the foreign business dealings have loomed large with Republicans on the Hill. And the question is that really sort of the meat of what the prosecutors are after here, which would be far more serious than the tax and gun-related issues, Gadi?
And have we heard anything from the White House?
Not yet. Last I checked, nothing there. And in the past, they really have tried to defer to the Justice Department on this issue.
Got it. Thanks so much.
Anytime.
3 men in Australia were rescued after their boat was attacked by sharks. And we're not talking like nudged and surrounded by sharks. Their boat was hit so many times it actually started to sink. NBC's Noah Pransky has that story.
Tonight, 3 sailors stranded at sea, now safe after this incredible rescue, necessary when their 30-foot boat was attacked over and over again by small sharks for days, hundreds of miles off the coast of Australia. Here you can see half the boat submerged in water as rescue choppers circled above to save the 3 crew members. The 2 Russians and 1 Frenchman issued a distress call early on Wednesday when it was clear they couldn't make it back to land on their own.
The emergency beacon absolutely saved their life. It enabled the Rescue Coordination Centre to identify their precise location and tailor the most appropriate and quickest response to rescue them.
The sailors were supposed to go from the Pacific island nation of Vanuatu to the Australian city of Cairns as part of a years-long around-the-world journey. But they never made it because these cookie-cutter sharks, a small species, check them out, only 16 inches long, but certainly menacing, attacked the catamaran repeatedly. first, the boat started to take on water, but was able to trudge along for another 100 miles before the sharks attacked again, this time piercing its right side, and the boat then began to sink completely.
There's many reasons that vessels are attacked by sharks. However, the motivations of these sharks is unclear.
The sailors, according to Australian officials, all happy to be rescued unharmed, and their belongings all safe tonight as well. But the catamaran lost at sea, leaving the future of their grand round-the-world voyage up in the air. Noah Pransky, NBC News.
Cookie-cutter sharks. Who knew? Coming up, a man wrongfully convicted of rape was just exonerated nearly 50 years later, all thanks to DNA. But why did it take so long? We're going to have a look. Coming up next.
After 48 years, I'm walking out a free man.
And now for the future of everything. Tonight, we are looking at the future of warfare. This week, the Pentagon basically laid out a very different strategy for fighting wars going forward. Now, we all think of the U.S. military might as things like billion-dollar aircraft carriers or Top Gun fighter jets, right? But the thing is, that whole entire infrastructure is very, very expensive to build, expensive to maintain, and even more expensive to defend, which might be why the Department of Defense is now publicly saying the U.S. military could soon be dominated by cheaper alternatives like drones, autonomous systems, and a whole lot of AI. Take a listen.
Replicator will galvanize progress in the too-slow shift of U.S. military innovation to leverage platforms that are small, smart, cheap, and many. Remember, these aren't ships or aircraft that we'll be using for the next 30 to 50 years. ADA2 systems are things we might use for 3 to 5 years before we move on to the next thing, as we must, given a dynamic, fast-moving adversary at the pace of innovation.
It's hard to hear there, but they are talking about an adversary. And if you're wondering what adversary they're talking about, China. And the reason, their global firepower. Last year, a Pentagon report described China's Navy as the largest in the world. Their autonomous systems are already being produced for, quote, operational applications. And we recently spoke to a career war gamer who says the Chinese Communist Party has one clear advantage over the U.S.
Most Chinese stuff are cheap copies. And frankly, our problem, though, is that they're very good at mass. They can scale and produce cheap copies of our radar on surface combatants, of stealth planes, of unmanned systems. And so their strength is mass.
Now, that is just part of this story. We're going to keep digging deeper into the future of warfare next week. Plenty more to come, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, more and more, we are hearing stories of wrongfully convicted people getting their convictions overturned. But what we rarely see is a judge getting emotional at that decision. And that's what happened yesterday when 72-year-old Leonard Mack got his 40-plus year conviction overturned for a rape he did not commit. The judge actually left her stand to walk over to give Mack that hug. And she said wiping his record was one of the greatest honors of her career. Mack spent nearly 5 decades with this hanging over his head before DNA testing finally cleared his name. And the news of his exoneration came down on his birthday.
After 48 years, I'm walking out a free man. Today I turned 72 years old. I couldn't think of a better gift.
Now, according to the Innocence Project, Mack's wrongful conviction is the longest to be overturned based on DNA evidence, but he's not the only one. More than 500 people have been exonerated based on DNA tests since 1989, 35 from death row, according to the National Registry of Exonerations. And Professor Lawrence Koblinski with the John Jay College of Criminal Justice joins us now. Professor, thanks so much for being with us. What went wrong in this case for it to take nearly 5 decades for Mack to be exonerated?
Well, there are primarily 3 reasons why this happened. First of all, and most importantly, was the misidentification by the 2 young 12th graders that were accosted by this man with a gun, a .22 caliber gun, and they had one of them was raped twice. And they were both bound up, their hands and wrists. And they were very traumatized. And they managed, after he left, they ran. They ran to get the police, and they ran for help. And about 2 hours later, the Greenberg Police Department sent, there was a police officer who actually stopped Leonard Mack and took him out, and they said he was dressed very much like the person they were looking for. He had a earring in the left ear and a black hat. He was clean shaven, and he had a tan jacket and black pants. Of course, Leonard Mack was not dressed quite that way, but he did have the earring in the left ear, the black hat. So they identified him. The police thought they had the right person because when they checked the trunk of his vehicle, they found a .22 caliber gun, which the girls said that the person had. So it looked pretty bad for Leonard Mack. There was a series of identifications that they attempted, all incorrectly done based on our standards nowadays. The photo lineup had 7 individuals. Mack was one of them. And all of the photos looked basically the same except for Mack's, which was clearly different from the other 6. So they picked him. And there were 2 other attempts to do identifications. They were wrong. They were just plain wrong, although the police were focused on Mack because he kind of fit the description that they thought of the perpetrator. Of course, there were other reasons that this was faulty. There was serology work done by the Westchester lab, and they looked at the evidence on the underwear. Fortunately, the cuttings that were taken were preserved. The rest of the stuff was lost. But because they had those cuttings, they could look at this at a later date and do other testing. At the time, before the actual conviction had taken place, it was determined that there was a blood type A, that the perpetrator must have had when they examined the semen portion of that cutting. That could not be Leonard Mack. He is not a type A. He should have been excluded on that basis alone. And in fact, a world-renowned expert, Alexander Weiner, who worked at the OCME, Office of Chief Medical Examiner in New York, confirmed that that was not him. It was a different person. Nevertheless, the jury decided, it was a year after the rapes took place in 1976, they convicted him to serve 7.5 years. There's also ineffective counsel. That's a third reason why these things happen. So it's a big issue. Too many people are wrongfully convicted. And thanks to the Innocence Project, which started in 1992, as you pointed out, hundreds of people have been exonerated.
Now, Professor, I get that DNA testing wasn't exactly an option back in 1975, but it does sound like they had that testing, they had that blood test, they still got that conviction. But still, from the advent of some pretty advanced forensic DNA testing that came around like the 2000s and on, it's still a pretty big gap between then and 2023, right? So why did it take so long for him to be exonerated with this DNA? And why does it take so long in general to exonerate people who were wrongfully convicted when it comes to DNA?
Well, first of all, there's a political reason. I think that the DAs don't like the idea of going back to a case that's already been fully litigated, and they've got a defendant, somebody who served time. They just don't want to go back and re-litigate the case. But from a scientific perspective, as you pointed out, there was no DNA back in 1975. People didn't know about DNA as part of the forensic toolkit. More like in the 90s, it started, but there's an evolution that took place. Some techniques worked. Some were not so good. The techniques have evolved. They've gotten more sophisticated. They've gotten more sensitive. And then nowadays, you can develop a good profile, even from a small, minute sample that's partially degraded. So we can do things now we just could not have done over the past few decades. Now, once you've got a profile, you can put it on the state's database, which didn't exist back then either. And when they did that, they actually came up with a hit. They found somebody who left that semen on that little girl's underwear, and they identified the person. The person had a track record of rape and burglary, and finally admitted to having committed the crime. So Leonard Mack was actually factually innocent.
Thankfully, those clippings were preserved. That doesn't always happen. Professor Lawrence Koblinski, thank you so much for joining us. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.